Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that fine piece of technology, which is free to use and free to download, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You could call or text them into the show at 719-247-1313. Coming up tonight, Air Force hockey starts the season for real, and for real, because not only does tonight count, but they're welcoming in the most difficult team on their schedule, the fifth-ranked team in the United States of America, the Denver Pioneers. Our coverage will begin at 6:30, and just fair warning, yours truly will be riding shotgun with the voice of Falcon Hockey, Jay Ritchie. So, don't say that you weren't warned when you tune in at 6:30 and you're like, it's Ryan again. It will be me again, but I'm looking forward to it. Was going to be doing the altitude broadcast tonight, but because of the government shutdown, no altitude broadcast tonight. So thankful that Jay's let me tag along and do some Air Force hockey tonight. So I actually want to start with hockey, if you don't mind. We'll go to the professional ranks, though, and talk about what happened last night and what has really happened through two games. The best player on the Colorado Avalanche, the first two games of the season, shouldn't even be playing right now. I'm not talking about Gabriel Landeskog. I'm literally talking about a player who shouldn't be playing right now, Scott Wedgwood. He's only started this season in goal because Mackenzie Blackwood is hurt. They would absolutely have Blackwood these first two games if he were healthy. So you get the backup to come in, and he absolutely saved the Avs last night, stopping 32 of 33 shots in a 2-1 win over Utah. In that game, the Avalanche were outshot by 7 shots, which I don't know if you think that's a lot or a little bit, but to give you a frame of reference, all of last season, the Avalanche were outshot by 4 or more shots. 11 times. They don't get outshot by 7 shots. That doesn't happen. 4 or more shots, more for the opponent, only happened 11 times out of 82 games last year. Did not happen once in the playoffs. That's not the way this is supposed to go. The Avalanche do not get outshot. And they were last night by a wide margin. And it's a little curious that happened, given that it was opening night. Jared Bednar had talked about getting off to a better start than they did in LA. They didn't. And especially in the second period, they lost energy. So it was not the effort that I think you were expecting to see from the Avs opening up the home portion of their schedule. So suffice to say that Jared Bednar was less than pleased with his hockey team overall, but very thankful that he has Scott Wedgwood.
I don't like leaning on our goalie like that. but it didn't look like we had a lot of jump tonight. I thought they had much more jump than we did for whatever reason. And some nights you have it, and some nights you don't. You got to find a way to grind through it. And on those nights, you need your goalie big time, and we got him tonight.
And to Jared Bednar's point, the entire premise of this team, in addition to not getting outshot, is that they don't have to pay goalies. And they have routinely done it. You may have wanted them to keep Darcy Kemper. They didn't want to pay Darcy Kemper. You may have wanted them to keep Philip Grubauer. They didn't want to pay Philip Grubauer. They signed Alexander Georgiev to an extension that is far below what an elite goaltender makes. They have budgeted differently at the goaltender position than a lot of teams. And what it allows them to do is to create this monster lineup that they have with McKinnon and now Landeskog back and Cale Makar, and you go on down the list. And it allows them to reinvest even more into the guys that play in front of goal. So, and there are other teams that have made that decision and are trying to. I think a lot of teams would like to do that. It's kind of like the running back position a little bit in the NFL. It doesn't mean that the position is less important, but as teams have had to pay more and more money for quarterbacks, you have to find somewhere where you can maybe control your costs a little bit. And in the NHL, I think many teams have gone in the direction that the Avs are in, where it's like, we're just not going to pay a goalie top of the market money. That's where we're going to save some dollars and cents. And you have to say, overall, it's been effective, right? They win a Stanley Cup with Darcy Kemper. Before that, Philip Grubauer, they made the playoffs. And then they brought in Georgiev. It worked for a while. Not last year, but it worked for a while. And that's kind of the trade-off, right? What's the shelf life of these guys if you're not, that idea that you get what you pay for? What the Avs have paid for is one of the most talented rosters in the NHL. And a top six that you put above any other team's top six, to say nothing of Cale Makar and Devon Toews. But you do get what you pay for. And there are diminishing returns when you're unwilling or unable, I suppose, because it is a salary cap league. There is some inability to pay everybody. You're not going to be able to have, Shesterkin or Ottinger, or you're not going to have that level of goaltending. But the Avs will happily trade that with a lineup that routinely outshoots their opponent, that has two of the 5 best players on planet Earth, and all these other things that this Avalanche team boasts. It's a trade-off that they're willing to make. And you could see the result of that. But when those guys, the higher top of market guys that they have throughout the roster, don't do their job, that's when things get a little nervy. Because as much as I like Mackenzie Blackwood, he's not Shesterkin, he's not Ottinger, he's not Connor Hellebuck. Right? But he can be really good. He could be Darcy Kemper-esque and give the Avalanche a chance to win the Stanley Cup. But that's their guy, though. That's my point here. This is not 2023 Boston Bruins here with Ullmark and Swayman. There's a goalie number 1 and a goalie number 2. if you're going to hoist the Stanley Cup, you're going to do it with Mackenzie Blackwood in net, not Scott Wedgwood. But the credit that you give Wedgwood over the last 2 games, especially last night, is he's played like a number one. You look at some of the underlying metrics, goals saved above expected. Right? The war of hockey goalies. Number 1 in the NHL is Igor Shesterkin through a couple of games. Number 2 is Scott Wedgwood. The expected goals that the Avalanche have conceded is 6 between these 2 games. Opposing teams, the Kings and the artist formerly known as Arizona, have scored a third of that. And that is a direct result of the goaltending of Scott Wedgwood. So it's been terrific to see, especially Wedgwood last night. And here's the reality of this situation. And you went through this last year if you're an Avalanche fan. Remember the start that Winnipeg got off to? The idea that you can waste any time. Like, Mackenzie Blackwood's hurt. Okay, we'll put in our backup and we'll just survive for a few games and then get going after. You can't do that in the Central Division. Even if you don't hold Winnipeg to that historic standard that they set last year, Winnipeg's still a cup contender. You still have Dallas, who's a cup contender. And depending on who you ask, some hockey people really like St. Louis. And then you go one of the most talented goal scorers in the NHL in Kirill Kaprizov, and you have a very feisty, much improved Utah team that you saw up close and personal last night. There are no nights off in the Central Division, and for a team that wants home ice, that has played these long series routinely over the last couple of years in the playoffs, the Avs want home ice. If they're going to win the best division in hockey, even 2 games into the season, you can't concede anything. Look at how hard this team had to work after the way they started last year, where they gave up about 6 goals a game through the first week of the year. You got to be able to go to your backup and still be able to win. That's going to have to happen. But for the fact that Scott Wedgwood played at an elite level last night, the Avs needed it. They needed Scott Wedgwood to bail them out last night because that effort wasn't it from the Avalanche. Not sustainable. All credit in the world to Scott Wedgwood. Not sustainable, and the Avs know that. They're not built this way. But given the way last season started, this is a nice change of pace with Scott Wedgwood playing as well as he has. And now you don't have to rush Mackenzie Blackwood back. You feel that confident moving forward. Maybe Scott Wedgwood gets a few more nights this season. But it's a number 1 and it's a number 2. And last night and even the Kings game to open the season, the number 2 played like a number 1. Avs win the game 2-1. Take your thoughts on it, 719-247-1313. Tom Segura, very funny comedian, one of the biggest comics in the world, is rolling through Colorado Springs on November 9th. He's going to the Broadmoor World Arena with his Come Together tour. It's selling out all over the world, this tour. So A, cool that it's coming through Colorado Springs, but B, probably don't want to wait till the last minute to get your tickets. You can get them at AXS.com or at the Broadmoor or at the Pikes Peak Center, box office. Coming up next on the show, Does what happened last night alter your perspective at all when it comes to the Broncos win over the Eagles? The Broncos had about 4 days. 4 days to bask in the glow of what ranks as maybe the best win of the season in the National Football League. They go into Philadelphia, knock off not only the reigning Super Bowl champions, but they also knock off the defending Super Bowl champions who were undefeated going into that game. And for 4 days, the Denver Broncos got to bask in the glow of that. And then last night happened. And now you don't know what to think about that win on Sunday, because the New York Giants, led by the all-bro team of Jackson Dart and Cam Scattaboo, put it on the Eagles 34-17. So now, what to make of the Broncos win against the Eagles? Here's the good news. It shouldn't change your perspective on Sunday's game. Because, one, I think beating that team on Sunday obviously adds more significance to it. But the biggest takeaway from Sunday's win for the Denver Broncos was the fact that they weren't the team making those mistakes at the end of games, the ones that cost them against Indianapolis and the Chargers. They were the ones that were able to rally in that game. There were so many other aspects to that Broncos win that even against a lesser opponent, or a seemingly lesser opponent, would be significant. The Broncos hadn't rallied to win hardly any games. They haven't been very good away from Denver. And especially in the last few weeks leading up to that game, they were plagued by mistakes when the game was on the line. So take the opponent out of it for a moment. That's the Broncos fixing some things. And even if you think a little bit less of the Eagles after what has happened, they're still a good team. Right? It's not like after last night, you look at the Eagles and they're like, they're terrible. They're not terrible. They're not a terrible football team. But that win on Sunday, I think, was more about Denver. Right? The things that they had been doing that cost them games that they didn't do on Sunday. So that's the first thing. So regardless of what happened to Philadelphia from here on out, the Broncos have kind of flipped that paradigm, which is going to be important for them moving forward. And here's the second part. And former Bronco TJ Ward, I saw him tweet this out last night. I think he's 100% right. Because we've been talking about this all week. The Broncos finding the way to attack this Eagles defense. Right? The words hitting them in the mouth have come up quite a bit on this show, on the Rich Eisen show. The physicality running the football that the Denver Broncos had was something that Philadelphia had not faced a lot of. The Chiefs don't have a running game. LA would rather throw the ball than run it. For the first time this season, and then Dallas obviously is Dallas, how they operate, with Dak Prescott throwing the ball a million times. The Eagles on Sunday, for the first time, faced a team that was committed to a physical running style on offense. So what do the New York Giants do? Brian Daboll looks around and says, hey, wait a minute. I got this dude who is basically a human battering ram named Cam Skattebo. I'm going to run that guy. 98 yards on 19 carries, 3 touchdowns. Even Jackson Dart ran the ball last night. You can't tell me that the New York Giants didn't watch Sunday's game and decide we're going to run Skattebo a little bit more. We're going to lean into that. They absolutely did. So until somebody else beats the Eagles in a different way, this is the way you beat the Eagles. Not every team can do it. Credit to the Giants and credit to the Denver Broncos. Because like I said, the Rams, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, are those teams capable of running the football the way that the Giants and the Broncos are? So I think TJ Ward is 100% right. The Broncos made the blueprint. But the thing about blueprints is you have to have the personnel to be able to follow that blueprint. And the Giants do. Now that's the Giants and Broncos offense against the Eagles defense. What is happening with the Eagles offense is another story. They're actually one of the teams that could replicate the Eagles. How you beat the Eagles is the Eagles, right? Like if the Eagles had to go up against a team who was vulnerable to a physical rush attack, they have the personnel to be able to run the ball effectively. And Saquon Barkley put this in a little bit more vulgar way last night in the locker room than I'm about to. But the Eagles got to stop worrying about what other teams want them to do. Right? When you are a Super Bowl champion, you should not pay any mind to any discussion from your opponents during the week about we're going to load up to stop the run. Obviously, that's the way that teams are going to play the Philadelphia Eagles. You know why? Because the scariest player on the Philadelphia Eagles is Saquon Barkley. So you gear up to try and slow that guy down and you worry about the rest later. Even if you went secondarily behind Saquon Barkley, the most dangerous player on the Philadelphia Eagles is Jalen Hurts when he's carrying the football. So teams are going to do this. But there's a confidence that you're supposed to have if you're the Super Bowl champions to say, good luck. Good luck. Try and stop us. We're going to do exactly what we want to do. And for a brief moment in that game, I know everyone's, losing their minds over the 4 straight tush pushes last night. But that's the Eagles going, we don't care what you're trying to do. We're going to do what we want to do. Try and stop it. But the last 2 games, they've gone away, and you throw in the additional aspect of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith pouting. And it's like they're trying to placate those two guys. They're trying to, make adjustments and say, oh, you think we're this? No, we're going to beat you like this. There should be a confidence with the Super Bowl champion that we're going to do what we want to do, and we're going to do it better than you can defend it. But I think there's a line between confidence and arrogance, and it's almost arrogant at times for the Eagles to think, well, you want to stop the run, we'll just air it out. You can't. Even as a Super Bowl champion, you have to know who you are and who you are not. Eagles dealt with this last year, and then what'd they do? They decide, you know what? We're going to run Saquon Barkley, and he had a spectacular MVP caliber season. And I know Drew Brees and others were nitpicking the Philadelphia Eagles and saying, man, Saquon's only running at 3 yards a carry. Jalen Hurts isn't effective running the ball. This Eagles team looks vulnerable. But you don't listen to that. You're not supposed to listen to that. And if you're Nick Sirianni, you're not supposed to listen to A.J. Brown's complaints. And you're supposed to say, we're the Eagles. This is what we do well. We're going to keep doing it. As long as we're putting W's on the board, we're not going to stop. And you saw it a little bit in the Denver game. You definitely saw it last night. This Eagles team play right into the hands of their opponent. And I talked about this leading up to the Denver game. The idea is you stop the run because if you can, the Eagles will play right into your hands. Now they're throwing in man coverage against Pat Surtain. Now they're dropping back Jalen Hurts with Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper running after him. Teams want the Eagles to throw the ball. They're loading up to stop the run because they're afraid of the run. Use that and run the ball. Teams would love regular season Jalen Hurts to throw it 30 times. So offensively, it's like arrogance mixed with trying to placate A.J. Brown. And it's not how the Eagles should be acting. And, maybe the losing to the Broncos in that way, the way they did, even with the Broncos rallying in the fourth quarter, maybe the message didn't really sink in. It should sink in after losing 34-17 to a division rival, and not just a division rival, but the worst of the division rivals. Giants are not a good football team. They have some good players, not a good football team. You didn't lose to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. You lost to Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, and the New York Giants. This should be a wake-up call for the Philadelphia Eagles if Sunday wasn't. But as far as the Broncos are concerned, maybe you start to look a little sideways at the Philadelphia Eagles and wonder what they're going to be moving forward. But I still think there was so much of that game that was about the Broncos fixing themselves, and that is the most important thing. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts on Eagles-Giants last night. You'll hear from Sean Payton a little bit later as he tells you what he's concerned with when it comes to the New York Jets as we continue on this Friday edition of Drive Time Sports here on Extra Sports 1300. With 67% of your vote, our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, presented by Blackjack Pizza and Salads, is Anaya Wright, outstanding volleyball player for Rampart. So congratulations to Anaya. And make sure you get in your nominations for next week's Athlete of the Week come Monday. 4 new finalists for you to vote on. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Had this question come in yesterday on the text line towards the very end of the show, so I didn't get a chance to go into it, but I think I'd like to delve into it right now. The text came in, so if I'm in Las Vegas right now and I had a bet, which, technology these days, I don't have to be in Vegas to put down one of these bets, but if I had to bet on either the Avs or the Nuggets to win it all this year, who would I be in on? And I got to tell you, I thought a lot about this. I think it would be the Denver Nuggets. I think they're both capable. But what makes the difference here is I think that Jokic is the best player in any series. And obviously there is one other player who you can probably still say is better than Nathan McKinnon, although the gap between the two is shortening. It would be Connor McDavid. So with the Nuggets, I have the best player unequivocally on planet Earth. I have the core of the championship team intact, right? With Jamal Murray, and I have my questions about Jamal Murray, and I will continue to. But with that Jokic Murray two-man game, I think when it's at its best, it's unstoppable. I think the depth that the Denver Nuggets have acquired would lean, and I know that the Avalanche have tried to do this as well, and I like Brock Nelson. I do. So they're deep, but I like, Jonas Valanciunas, and I know he's a starter, but Cam Johnson, the fit that I think he's going to be. And also, I think one tiebreaker, I just think there are fewer teams in the NBA that I can see winning a title. Now, because of what's happened, the defending champions are very different in each, right? Oklahoma City, they don't have the issues that Florida does in the NHL, right? The champions have been weakened greatly by injury. And Kachuk will be back seemingly in plenty of time. He's only going to miss half the season. Barkov, I don't know if he's going to play at all. And in a series if the Avs make it to the Stanley Cup and win up against last year's Florida team, Barkov could do to Nathan McKinnon what he does to Connor McDavid. He's the best defensive center in the NHL. So even though the defending champion is not as strong as they were a year ago in the NHL, I just think if I asked this question yesterday, if not Oklahoma City. I don't think either should be viewed as the favorite, the Nuggets or the Avalanche. But in a world where you say, if not OKC, then who? I think I would answer Denver. And we're asking this question in the NHL because of what's happened to Florida. So the prevailing belief, although there are already rumors that the Panthers are going to be able to swing a trade for Evgeny Malkin at some point this year. But we're asking this question in the NHL, if not Florida, then who? I don't know that the next team out of my mouth would be Colorado. Because not only is Dallas been a bad matchup for the Colorado Avalanche, player for player, Dallas might be better than Colorado. Right? And that's just to get through to have a chance to go at the Oilers, who have owned this conference for years now. So if in the question of if not Florida, then who, I'm like, well, it could be Dallas, could be Colorado, could be Edmonton, could be Vegas. In the NBA, if not Oklahoma City, I think Denver. So the path of lesser resistance, even though Oklahoma City is the prohibitive favorite, and I don't know, I'd have to wait and see if the Nuggets, as currently constructed, can beat this Oklahoma City team. But if something were to happen to OKC and somebody else would have to be the champions, I would immediately answer Denver. Now, they have their own matchup problem with Minnesota, but Minnesota, they're losing some guys. Right? So I wonder, with Minnesota losing a couple of guys, with Denver gaining the guys, does that ultimately make the difference? And now the Denver Nuggets can beat the Wolves in a 7-game series. You still have that question. But I just think the path for the Avalanche is more difficult than the Nuggets. I don't think Houston adds Kevin Durant and immediately wins the title, although they'll be really good. And then there's Minnesota, and then it's like Spurs aren't ready. I'm not buying either one of the LA teams. ESPN has Golden State as the 3 seed, and I just heard Steve Kerr talking about how his best players are in their late 30s. Like, give me a break. Warriors aren't a top 3 seed. Come on now. And then if you get out of the West, I'm not closing the door on Boston, but I have to see Jason Tatum come back. But I would like the Nuggets against the Bucks. I would like the Nuggets against the Knicks or the Cavaliers. So I think if I had to bet on one, it would be Denver. And you brought up Vegas. Vegas right now has the Nuggets with shorter odds to win the NBA title than they have the Avs. I don't think either should be looked at as the favorite. But if I had to bet on one, I think I would take the Denver Nuggets for all of those reasons. Like your thoughts on it. Avs Nuggets, if you had to pick one to back financially to win a title this year, which one would it be? Or let me introduce another wrinkle into this. Just for fun, maybe a little litmus test to see how significant Sunday's win was. So if I told you, you got to look at it this way, right? If you could, maybe not who you believe in more, because I think it would be kind of crazy to say, I believe the Broncos have a better shot at winning the Super Bowl than the Avs have to win a Stanley Cup or the Nuggets to win an NBA title. But let's look at it through the lens of Vegas, right? Where bets aren't always, hey, this is actually what I think's going to happen. Sometimes it's about what can I see happening and get a potential bigger payout. So right now, the Nuggets are 7-1 to win the 7-1 to win the NBA title. The Avs are 9-1 to win the Stanley Cup. The Denver Broncos are 22-1. So do that math. What ticket would you rather have at this point? Like, you can have the team that you think is more likely and it would be a lower payout, or you could go for the bigger payout and bet on the Broncos at 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'm more of a conservative bettor, so I would not. I'll take something I believe in more at a lower payout because I don't like losing my bets. And right now, I don't see how the Denver Broncos win the Super Bowl. So I would feel like I'm throwing my money away, even if it was a smaller bet. I'd rather put it on one of the other two with a little less upside. And I would certainly take, if I'm going with my teams, I would certainly take a ticket on the Avs or the Nuggets over the Chiefs, who are 7.5-1 to win the Super Bowl. There's not enough. Now, if the Chiefs were 22-1 to win the Super Bowl, their odds are still too short for my liking, given the way that this season is going for them. It was a good question. Glad you brought it up. Took up a lot of my time last night thinking about this back and forth. 719-24-7. 1313 is the number. Coming up next, more on the Avs. Why 2 games in, something is unfortunately very much the same as it was to end last season. Welcome in hour 2 on this Friday. Great to have you. Great to be talking to you. Whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or maybe you're seeing me, hello, on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The handle the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, follow, like, subscribe, drop a comment. I appreciate every single one of those actions. And do not take it lightly that you are willing to do those things. If you'd like to text or call into the show, you could do it at 719-247-1313. Tonight, Air Force begins the season at home against Denver, team ranked 5th in America. They've been a good program recently, if you haven't been keeping up. A few things different about DU, though. Get into that in a little bit. I do want to start this hour with hockey as well, though. You know, it's a peculiar thing. It's a peculiar, can't say it. It's weird. It's weird. The fact that the Avalanche's biggest weakness is the power play. It really is. Just zoom out. Like, don't worry about what you're seeing. Just, like, think about the premise of the Avalanche power play being not elite. Anytime you have Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar on the ice at the same time, the only team in the NHL that could say maybe they have a better lineup out there is Edmonton. Just simply by putting MacKinnon and Makar out on the ice at the same time, you're better than all but one team. Your lineup is better than everyone but Edmonton throwing out McDavid and Draisaitl. And the good thing is you don't just have to throw out MacKinnon and Makar. You could put out Natchez and Lehkonen and Devon Taves. And if you take that 5 that the Avalanche put out there, their starting 5, their best 5, top 5, whatever you want to call it, that's the best in the entire league. When those guys were on the ice together last year after the Mikko Rantanen trade, no other 5-man lineup in the NHL was as good as that. So I wouldn't blame you if you went, well, that's 5-on-5. What if the team that they're playing has one less player out there? Surely they would be just as lethal, if not more so. If they had that 5 against 4, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Their power play ranked 14th out of the 16 playoff teams last year. This year, not off to a good start. 20th out of 30. Or is it 31 teams now in the NHL? They're 20th. It's not great. And the power play goal that they did score last night, because they did get one in their 2-1 win over Utah, and it was ultimately the difference in the game. So that's nice. But when you look at that goal that was scored by Nathan MacKinnon, it was only really by the grace of Mikhail Sergachev, for reasons that I cannot and will not try to understand, took himself out of the play. So Utah's already down to 4. Then Sergachev says, I'm going to go on the forecheck by myself. Shouldn't be doing that. Because now the Avs get a clean exit from their own zone, get through the neutral zone easily, and now Sergachev is behind the play. So it's essentially 5-on-3 at that point. and then two of the Utah players run into each other. And as they're coming apart, that opens up a lane for Nathan McKinnon to shoot through. So even the power play goal that the Avs scored last night was not one where you tip your cap to the Avs and you say, great job by you. It's actually poor play by Utah that led to that goal. So the power play still not great, not terrible, but not great. See if Jared Bednar has an answer for it.
For me, in both games, part of it's like recognition and execution. You know what I mean? Like the execution 5-on-5 with the puck has not been good for the first two games, and it's also on the power play. I think there's plays to be made in LA, especially that we didn't make and couldn't execute, and today kind of the same thing.
The recognition I think that Jared Bednar is speaking of is when a team like Utah decides to go at the Avs a little bit more, get a little bit closer, not sitting back on the penalty kill. They're kind of creeping up on the Avs, trying to take away some time and space. But here's the thing, when you only have so many players on the ice, taking away one kind of space vacates another. So the recognition that I didn't see last night from the Avalanche was when Utah is creeping up to them to try and make it more difficult for them to shoot. All of a sudden, there's all sorts of ice between the Utah players and their goalie. Somebody's got to get in that space. And no one was doing it. The way you beat a penalty kill, not trying to say it, you have to have some ideas, you have to draw it up. But the premise of beating a penalty kill is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of how you do these things, right? How you create these things. But it's a two-step process. One, you got to move the puck quickly. And two, you got to get that puck and bodies to the net. It's really, at its foundation, that simple. The Avalanche routinely don't do that second thing, especially when it comes to bodies. They don't put a lot of bodies in front of the goal. And I really can't understand why they don't. Especially when you're struggling on the power play, that the way that the Avs did in the playoffs and how the last couple of nights have gone, you would think that they're like, you know what, to heck with this. I'm just going to barrel right at the goalie and I'm going to try and get in those dirty areas and just put the puck in that way. I'm not going to try and camp out on the perimeter and rip a wrister past him. I want to go right to the source, right to the net front, and just bat in a puck that way. You would think that would be the natural inclination. And it's really not with this team. Now they bring in Dave Haxtell, used to coach the Seattle Kraken, to try and get the 5-on-4 aspect of this team to rise to the level of 5-on-5, because again, 5-on-5, Avalanche are about as good as it gets in the NHL. But what, at least in Dave Haxtell has talked about this, that he's trying to blend what he likes to do with the strengths of this team. So we don't know quite what the finished product is going to be here. But looking back on what Dave Haxtell has done other places on the power play, he preaches patience, right? Kind of wait out the other team. Take them into the championship round, so to speak. Make them defend for as long as you can. And what he banks on is that the other team will break down somewhere, allowing you to exploit that and score a goal. There's a line between patience and decisiveness, though. Right? Or you can be patient, but you also have to be decisive. And there is seemingly quite a bit of indecisiveness coming from the Avs, where it's like, ooh, that's kind of a good shot, but let me pass it up. Like, we all extol the virtues of someone who will pass up a good shot for a great shot, right? In hockey and basketball, we praise people that do that. But that is itself a very fine line. Sometimes you got to take the good shot. Sometimes the great shot is not promised to you. And there are a lot of times on the power play where I look at the Avs and I say, take the good shot and somebody go crash the net and see if there's a rebound opportunity. And there's just not enough of that. And I wonder, because the Seattle power plays, and look, the one thing that you could say is that Seattle, despite that one playoff series, throughout the course of their history has not been as good as the Colorado Avalanche. Okay, so I'll give Haxtell at least this level of credit. He was working with lesser pieces than he is right now. But I don't know if the power play I saw in Seattle, those ideas, that game plan, is actually going to remedy what I believe is the biggest issue with the Avalanche power play. I don't see a team that lacks patience. I see a team that doesn't get to the net front and passes up good shots looking for great shots. And I think they need to swing the pendulum a little bit back the other way. Take some good shots. Get into those dirty areas and see what happens. I just don't, especially with Utah. And John Michael Lyles was screaming it on the Altitude broadcast last night. He's like, when three Utah guys are trying to take away time and space from the Avs skaters, that open, you got to get people to the net front. You got to get guys in behind that. And this is part of the reason why teams like Utah, like Carolina, that are willing to press a little bit on the penalty kill. You know, they don't just sit back and turtle up and hope that time runs out. They kind of go at, to their credit, they kind of go at the Avs a little bit, or really good attacking teams like the Avs. And that's kind of why the Avs struggle a little bit. And I said it yesterday that the Avs historically have had some trouble with the artist formerly known as the Coyotes when they're in Arizona, and now that they're in Utah, because of their style of play in the way that they kill penalties is not the way that the Avs like to. They don't like to play against teams that do that, because they are a team that likes to fly around and utilize time and space, all that kind of stuff. And when you can take that away from them, they get a little bit frustrated. And Utah did that last night. But there's a counter to it. Just because somebody takes away time and space, or a team takes away the Avs time and space, other time and space opens up. Maybe not as much time, but space opens up. Right? To the point of, if Utah is going to pressure on the perimeter, that opens up more space between them and their goalie. Somebody's got to get in there, and it can't just be Arturi Lehkonen. Now, he's known for that. But I think you need more. You need more commitment to get to the net front. Lehkonen has that in his game. Landeskog has that in his game. I think you need a little bit more of it. A little bit more. Another guy to do that. But Jared Bednar's right. I mean, you can't, his comments last night, you can't be good 5-on-4 if you're not good 5-on-5. But here's the thing. You could be good 5-on-5 and not be good on 5-on-4. That's kind of the way it works. It starts with the 5-on-5 play. Avs most nights, ironically, not last night, but most nights, really good 5-on-5. But it doesn't necessarily translate to the power play. And the fact that their 5-on-5 play did not spill over into the 5-on-4 play was the reason why they lost to the Dallas Stars. It's the reason why they keep butting their heads up against that Dallas Stars wall. And it's why they fired Ray Bennett, and it's why they brought in Dave Haxtell. That the way they're going to get past Dallas is that power. And nobody's, I mean, you could dream of a world where the Avs are like the Oilers, right? The Oilers 5-on-5, amazing. The Oilers 5-on-4, even more lethal. Like, that would be great. That would be the Avalanche utopia. But they were 14th out of 16 playoff teams on the power play. That's not going to cut it. You're not winning a Stanley Cup that way. And conversely, you have the Dallas Stars who 5-on-5 are maybe not as good as the Avs, but they're elite. And then their penalty kill is one of the 5 best in the NHL. That's going to be the team storyline that continues through this season. There are individual storylines, how Gabriel Landeskog holds up, the Marty Necas contract negotiation. But from a team standpoint, that's the biggest story. The improvement that the Avalanche make on the power play is going to be a thread that I'm going to be following throughout this season, because it will be an indicator of whether the Avalanche will get to the Stanley Cup final, especially if they end up going up against Dallas again. And to be fair, I don't expect to see the Avalanche's power play be completely fixed in 2 regular season games. What I look at last night that's a little concerning is I don't see the different way that they're playing. I know that Dave Haxtell's introducing new ideas. I just don't see them. I don't see what they are, because you're either screaming one of 2 things if you're an Avs fan at the television when the Avs are on the power play. Shoot the puck or get to the net. And I haven't seen a lot, and you're doing that same thing through 2 games. Right? You look at the goal they scored on the power play against the Kings. What was that? Face-off win to Necas, boom, goal. That was decisive. That was quick puck movement. But when you can slow them down, when they don't get when they have to bring the puck up the ice, when they have to set up shop in the attacking zone, that's when things get bogged down. That's when you're like, 10 seconds in, you're like, pull the ripcord. This attack is done. But as the saying goes, you'd rather be learning these lessons and wins rather than losses. And you can thank Scott Wedgwood for that. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, what concerns Sean Payton about the Jets on Sunday? 719-247-1313 is the text and phone line if you want to interact, talking about the Avalanche woes on the power play continuing, albeit 2 games into the regular season. Albert says you don't score breakaway goals on the power play. Avs are built with speed and to play fast. They don't know how to play and move inside the blue line when they can't create space. There's no mucker who gets that ugly goal. They need a Dino Ciccarelli or the like. And I don't know that they make them like Dino anymore, right? There's some species of hockey player that is going extinct or is at least endangered in the NHL, right? The enforcer, maybe some of those guys, because we live, the Avs are in many ways the pinnacle, the best version of what the NHL has become. You could certainly argue Edmonton, Dallas are in that conversation as well. But the game itself has evolved to a more highly skilled game than it used to be. And I think you really, if you're a super skilled player, you have to really fight the natural inclination to just kind of camp out and rely on your ability to shoot the puck or your ability to deke guys. And what it goes on with the Avalanche is not unique. I think you see it in many NHL cities. It's just the way that the game is evolving. But we're talking about the Avalanche as a Stanley Cup contender, right? Them being what were they, 8th last year for the season on the power play. So maybe after the Rantanen trade, they got a little bit worse, I think. Not saying that that's going to continue, because I do think that Natchez can fit in very well. And it's not like Mikko Rantanen was solving the issues that we're talking about here. But like, you look at a team like Edmonton, and it's like they're lethal 5-on-5, and they are almost automatic 5-on-4. The Avs should be closer to that. Don't have to be that. It would be nice if they were. Got to get closer. They're not close enough. But you have, like I said, Lehkonen, maybe the idea is you change it up a little bit and you get Landeskog and Lehkonen out on the ice instead of them being on separate power play units. Maybe you play them together a little bit more. Maybe you leave, but then you worry that second shift on the power play, what are you going to go to? So it's going to take some time, and Jared Bednar has some decisions to make. But like, if you really need maybe the last few seconds of a power play, or it's the most important power play of the game, maybe you get Landeskog and Lehkonen out there and not Natchez. And you bring in another guy that gets to the net front. Because it's like the first unit, you have Lehkonen that can do that, and then the second unit has Landeskog. But even then, Valeri Nichushkin should be this kind of guy too. It really is puzzling. And look, if the Avs weren't puzzled, they would be an elite power play unit, right? So we're trying to figure out the same thing Jared Bednar and company are trying to figure out. It's a work in progress. I certainly didn't expect it to be, night and day from where we last left off the Avalanche's power play, but it's got to be better. I mean, that's just the bottom line. By the time they get to the spring, it has to be better, or they're going to run up against the same problem they had with Dallas last year. Good text, Albert. 719-247-1313. This text came in. Oh, I went to this. You joined me a little bit later today. I actually went to this. Shouted you out at the beginning of the show because I thought it was such a good question, but I'll answer it since it's your text. Who has the better chance to win it all this year, the Nuggets or the Avs? I went with the Nuggets. And it's as much about the path to a championship as it is the quality of the team. I mean, this is really apples and oranges, but are the Avs a much better hockey team than the Denver Nuggets are a basketball team from a talent perspective? No. Right? Maybe Nikola Jokic is a better basketball player than Nathan McKinnon is a hockey player by a little bit, but then Cale Makar is a much better hockey player than Jamal Murray. So you go on down the list, as difficult as that is to do because they're different sports. I would say the quality of the two teams, it's probably a push. And it struck me how similar their roster building over the last year has been. Right? Both teams are talking about depth. Both teams are going out at Avs during the regular season before the trade deadline. Nuggets this offseason are going out, adding depth. That both of these teams have had that on their mind. There are players for both teams that you just wonder over the course of 82 games how they're going to hold up. Gabriel Landeskog for the Avalanche, Jamal Murray for the Denver Nuggets, or maybe it's Aaron Gordon for the Denver Nuggets. I think they're similar in a lot of ways. And you would say coaching, you give the nod to Jared Bednar. But then what really decides it for me is if I ask the question, if not Oklahoma City or if not the Panthers, then who? When I say if not Oklahoma City, I say Denver. Immediately. Doesn't mean that there aren't other contenders, but I do say the Avs or the Nuggets immediately. And we're living in this world in the NHL because Barkov is hurt, Kachuk is hurt. You ask the question, if not Florida, then who? I don't know that you immediately go to Colorado. I don't know if it's as clear cut. Because you're bringing in Dallas, you're bringing in Edmonton, Vegas. So I went at this a few different ways last night, and where I ended up, the tiebreaker just being how many more teams can I see winning an NBA title than a Stanley Cup? And the answer is fewer. I don't believe in the Cavs as a championship team. I don't think the Knicks are a championship team. I won't count out Giannis, but I don't know that he has enough players around him to win a title. And in the West, it's OKC. Yeah, fair play to them. They're the favorite, certainly. But the next team up, I think, would be Denver. So that's where I ended up. And Vegas, I guess, in a way agrees with me because the Nuggets have are 7-1 to win the title, whereas the Avs are 9-1. They're both going to be in the mix. They're both absolutely title contenders, which is, I think, why you asked the question. But I would lean Nuggets. This text coming in. It's not Cicerelli Kaufman, even though he did a quick bid in the slam. It's Dennis Maruk, who got the crease goals, 60 and 81-82, a distant to Gretzky's 92. I think there's been more than one. If we could be fair, we all have, and I'm not surprised you're mentioning Edmonton. Albert's mentioning somebody who spent time with the Red Wings. They were in more abundant supply the further you go back in NHL history. That breed of player is not as plentiful as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. but you need it. And that's why Florida is, a budding dynasty, because they have that in their game, right? Barkov will do that. Kachuk will do that. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why the Florida Panthers are who they are, but that's part of it. The physicality, getting into those dirty areas, they'll do it. Not a ton of teams do it, and the Avs don't do it enough, in my opinion, when they're on the power play. 719-24-7, 13-13. I'll get to Sean Payton's final comments before Sunday's game against the Jets next. Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs for 2 spectacular shows on Sunday, November 16th at the Broadmoor World Arena. Kick off the holiday season in the best way possible by going to axs.com or by dropping by the Pikes Peak Center box office. Broncos favored by 7 to 7.5, depending on where you shop, Sunday in London against the winless New York Jets. There's a little Jedi Padawan type dynamic going on with Aaron Glenn and Sean Payton. I don't know that you can look at the history of that and make any grand proclamations about this game. Sean Payton has destroyed Dennis Allen, who's on his coaching tree, and he's been destroyed by Dan Campbell. So the idea that Sean Payton always gets over on guys from his coaching tree, that's not the case. It's been a mixed bag, but there's that dynamic on Sunday. Certainly, Sean Payton knows what Aaron Glenn wants to do, but he says knowing and stopping it are 2 very different things.
There's a number of things. Obviously, they're running the ball extremely well, really well. We've seen Fields and his explosiveness. He's involved in the run game. I think the runner's having one of his better seasons. The young receiver is explosive. The run game is going to be really important. And then offensively, that first half last week, eliminating some of the self-inflicted, the things that slow you down or keep you from, getting momentum.
Let me start with the Broncos defense versus the Jets offense, and then I'll flip like Sean Payton did there for the offense versus the Jets defense. I don't know that it's going to be a lot different game plan wise for the Jets than it was the Eagles. When I listen to Sean Payton talk, I'm like, that's probably exactly what he said about the Eagles. Right? You respect the running back. The quarterback gets involved in the run game, and there is a receiver worth paying attention to. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same ideas from the Denver Broncos. I think what they're going to want to do is take away the run and force Justin Fields to throw the football. Make him throw the football from the pocket. Now, Justin Fields is not the reason why the Jets are 0-4. He's played well enough for the Jets to win football games. But Justin Fields, the thrower of the football, is a little less worrisome than Justin Fields, the dual threat quarterback. So I think you're going to see a lot of the same ideas, the same intent from the Denver Broncos defensively, which is got to dare these guys to throw the football, got to force these guys to throw the football. And I'm sure the Jets will be trying to pick on Riley Moss. I just don't know what receiver they would have out there if you have Pat Surtain shadowing Garrett Wilson all day. Because that's the other part of it, too. When we're talking about Riley Moss getting burned, he is getting burned by pretty good receivers. To be fair to the guy. I don't know that the Jets have that. So I think it's a lot same defensively for the Denver Broncos. But what Sean Payton said there about the offense is really what I'm looking for. I know that the Broncos just lost last year to a Justin Fields-led team, and everything that Sean Payton is talking about, I agree with. Like, the Broncos have got to stop the run, and they got to keep Justin Fields in the pocket and all that kind of stuff. But really, the first thing I'm looking at is what we have seen in the first half against Cincinnati and the fourth quarter against the Eagles. Can we see that for most of the game? Most games in the NFL, and Sean Payne talked about this morning as well. And boy, did he get a great bit of not bulletin board material, but he can hold up last night's game to further fortify his point about there being no such thing as a, trap game, basically meaning, anybody can beat anybody. Right? The Giants-Eagles game is a perfect example of that. So that had to bring a smile to Sean Payne's face. And the fact that it's one of his former employers might make him even happier. But can we see the Denver Broncos put together what they've done in pieces for an entire game? There's going to be lulls where the Jets may be getting the better of the Denver Broncos, but it's been really good football from the Broncos. First half against Cincinnati, not the second half. Fourth quarter against the Eagles, not the first three quarters. Even less than that in the previous three games before the Cincinnati game. And in the pre-snap penalties, putting them behind the sticks are the number one thing. There was still some of that going on in the Cincinnati game, still some of it early against the Eagles. They got to cut that stuff out. Just looking for not a dominant performance necessarily, just a sustained quality four-quarter performance from the Denver Broncos, more specifically offensively. I don't know how much you want to contribute to the rain last year, but against a very similar defense in terms of the personnel, maybe a different scheme and all that, but a lot of the same players on the Jets defense on Sunday were on the Jets defense last year. And Bo Nix, yes, the weather was the weather, struggled a little bit. So, but I just think it's the identity that the Denver Broncos want to have. Pound the rock, run the football. And it's really hard to do that when it's 2nd and 10. Or even 2nd and 10, but like 2nd and 15, 2nd and 20. For 1st and 20. It get the way that the Denver Broncos want to play, a pre-snap penalty or a holding call on first down completely wrecks their drive. That's one thing that I don't know that the Broncos want to get into those situations on Sunday, but that's also something they're going to have to figure out a way to get through as the season goes on, is when they are behind the sticks, can they come up with some plays? Because they certainly don't do that. An early down penalty or a pre-snap penalty completely short circuits every drive that the Broncos are on. And that's too slim of a margin here. You got to give yourself a little bit of, maneuvering room here. We got to see the Denver Broncos in really big games, right? Because you're going against really good teams. You're going to fall into those situations. It's just natural. Can you extricate yourself from there? Right now, the Broncos can't do that. That's for another day. Sunday is about being ahead of the sticks, running the football, being who you have been in fits and spurts over the last couple of weeks, enough to win, but doing it for the vast majority of the football game. We're back to style points with the Denver Broncos. There's some style points that can be earned here. Doesn't mean they got to win by 20, but just a well-oiled offensive machine on Sunday And if the Broncos do that, then all good. And then they'll worry about the Giant Bros next week. Cam Scattaboo and Jackson Dart. On Extra Sports 1300, I'll let you know what we got for you as far as our NFL schedule. It starts at 11. Interesting matchup. Two teams that I don't know that a lot of people had high hopes for. Travis Hunter and the Jacksonville Jaguars, off of that big win against Kansas City, will host the Seattle Seahawks led by Sam Darnold. Our 2 p.m. window will be Joe Flacco in his debut for the Cincinnati Bengals going up against Micah Parsons. Thought the Bengals were having enough trouble already keeping their quarterback upright, and now here comes Micah Parsons and the Packers defense. And then, of course, Sunday Night Football will be the Lions and the Chiefs. Chiefs, tough spot to get a bounce-back win. That makes Monday night sting all the more if you're the Chiefs, because you're looking at this game with Detroit. And with the struggles Philadelphia's had, is Detroit now the most people's pick to be the best team in the NFL? You want to talk about style points. The Lions have picked up style points along the way. So Jacksonville, Seattle, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Detroit, our triple header on Sunday right here on Extra Sports 1300. That is all of my time for today because I am headed to the Air Force Academy. Won't you join me and Jay Ritchie, as I'll be pinch hitting as Jay Ritchie's analyst for tonight's game. Air Force taking on Denver. Don't forget, big weekend of hockey for the Falcons. They'll take on DU tonight at 7, CC tomorrow at 5. Both of those games can be heard here on Extra Sports 1300. And one note, if you are a Switchbacks fan, the terrestrial home, the radio home for tomorrow's match against Charleston will be 740 KVOR because of football and hockey and everything. But if you tend to stream the matches on Extra Sports 1300 or the Extra Sports 1300 app, you'll be good to go for tomorrow night's match with Charleston Battery. But if you're on your radio dial looking for the Switchbacks, you'll want to click down to 740 KVOR. Appreciate your patronage this week. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll have another Broncos game to discuss. And don't forget tomorrow, too, Avs are taking on Dallas. So it should be a lot to talk about on Monday. Talk to you then.